Deep in the jungles of central Vietnam, there's a place the locals say no birds ever sing. They call it the Silent Hill of Khe San. It's a place steeped in history, a place where the earth itself seems to hold its breath. Every night, when the fog rolls in thick and heavy, the wind carries strange whispers through the trees, and sometimes, if you listen closely enough, you can hear the unmistakable sound of boots marching in the dark, a spectral patrol that never ends. This isn't just a story told to scare tourists. It's a chilling legend born from the brutal reality of a war that, for some, has never truly been over. Locals avoid this hill after dusk, believing the spirits of the fallen still guard their final post, forever caught in a loop of a battle that concluded decades ago. In 2009, an American traveler named Jack arrived in Vietnam. He wasn't your typical tourist looking for scenic beaches or bustling city markets. Jack was a war historian, but his mission was deeply personal. He was searching for the exact location where his late father, a US soldier, had fought his most harrowing battle. Clutched in his hand were faded photographs and letters filled with cryptic descriptions of the terrain. His father's words painted a picture of a relentless jungle and a hill that seemed to swallow men whole. Jack believed that by finding this place, he could finally understand the man his father became after the war. But some places hold their secrets tightly, and they are not meant to be found. The jungle seemed to conspire against him, his compass spinning erratically, the trails on his map leading to nowhere. He sought guidance in a nearby village, a small hamlet that existed in the shadow of the infamous hill. An old man, his face a roadmap of wrinkles and memories, took one look at the photos in Jack's hand and shook his head gravely. "The path you seek is not for the living," he warned, his voice low. "Do not stay on that hill after sunset. The soldiers, they still marched there. They are looking for their way home." Jack, a man of logic and facts, offered a polite but skeptical smile. "Ghosts don't scare me," he replied, confident in his modern equipment and rational mind. But as the sun began its fiery descent, casting long, distorted shadows across the jungle, an unnatural chill crept into the air. The vibrant chorus of the jungle, the birds, the insects, the monkeys fell into an abrupt, eerie silence. It was as if the world was holding its breath, waiting. Back in the village, shutters were bolted and doors were barred. Alone on the edge of the hill, Jack lit his small campfire, its flickering light a tiny beacon against an overwhelming darkness. Huddled by the fire, Jack pulled out his father's letters, the brittle paper crinkling under his touch. He reread the familiar lines, trying to piece together the final moments his father had described. That's when he heard it. A faint but distinct sound, the crunch of dry leaves under a heavy boot, then another, and another. It was a steady, rhythmic cadence. Jack's heart began to pound in his chest. He slowly turned his head, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, and there, standing just beyond the edge of the firelight, was a figure, a man, dressed in a torn and dirt-stained US Army uniform from the Vietnam era. Half of the man's face was a mess of scarred tissue, as if ravaged by fire, but his eyes were shockingly, unnervingly alive. The soldier's gaze locked onto Jack, and a raspy whisper escaped his lips, a voice that sounded like gravel and forgotten memories. "You're late, Private." Jack was frozen, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. This couldn't be real. It had to be a trick of the light, a hallucination brought on by exhaustion and the unsettling atmosphere. The figure took a step forward, the light catching the tarnished insignia on his collar. He was real. The ghost flickered, his form wavering between solid and transparent, like a faulty television signal. He raised a spectral hand and pointed past Jack, towards the dark looming peak of the hill. "Charlie's in the wire. We gotta hold the line. Where have you been?" The soldier's voice was filled with a desperate urgency, as if he was still in the heat of a battle that ended half a century ago. Static crackled from an invisible radio, ghostly voices whispering call signs and warnings of an incoming attack. Jack realized this wasn't just a random spirit. This soldier thought Jack was one of them, a new replacement who had finally shown up for duty. He was trapped in his last memory, eternally fighting a war that history books had already closed. Jack was no longer just a historian observing the past. He had become a part of its terrifying, living echo. Thank you for watching this chilling tale. If you enjoy stories that blur the line between history and the supernatural, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more. We have many more mysteries to explore together. Stay safe and see you next time. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into a story that blurs the lines between history, mystery, and the supernatural. It's a tale that begins with a photographer named Jack, who traveled to the jungles of Vietnam, chasing legends of ghostly soldiers who still patrol the infamous Khe Sanh combat base. He thought he was hunting for a myth. What he found was something far more real. For days, Jack found nothing but silence and overgrown ruins. The once bustling base was now just a scar on the landscape, swallowed by the jungle. The air was thick and heavy, filled with the ghosts of memory. He began to think the stories were just that, stories. But on the third night, under a sliver of a moon, the jungle changed. A strange, cold fog rolled in, and with it came a sound, the unmistakable crackle of a radio. Speaking in codes long since forgotten, Jack's heart pounded in his chest. He wasn't alone. From the dense fog, a figure emerged. It was an American soldier, his uniform torn and faded, yet he stood tall, his eyes empty and lost. He wasn't a local in a costume. He was translucent, a phantom shimmering in the moonlight. Jack, frozen in place, could only raise his camera, the click of the shutter echoing in the unnatural silence. The soldier didn't flinch, he just stared, his expression a mixture of confusion and sorrow, as if he was looking right through Jack, searching for something that wasn't there. More figures began to materialize from the mist, dozens of them, all in the same spectral state, their movements slow and deliberate. They weren't aggressive, they seemed lost, forever replaying a mission that had no end. They were phantoms trapped between worlds. Then, the first soldier, the one who had appeared initially, stepped forward. His voice was a dry whisper, like leaves skittering across pavement. "Are you our relief?" he asked, his words hanging in the cold night air. Jack, a journalist used to asking questions, was speechless. All he could do was shake his head. The soldier's ghostly form seemed to flicker with disappointment. "We've been waiting," he whispered, before turning and dissolving back into the ever-thickening fog. The next night, compelled by a force he couldn't explain, Jack returned. The fog was waiting for him, and so were the soldiers. This time, the first ghost held something out to him. It was a dog tag. Jack's blood ran cold as he read the name etched into the metal. It was identical to his own father S., a man who had served in Vietnam and whose stories had haunted Jack's childhood. "He never made it home," the ghost said, his voice filled with an ancient sadness. "None of us did. We're still waiting for orders." In that moment, Jack understood. These weren't just spirits. They were soldiers trapped in a war that, for them, had never ended. Ghostly helicopters, faint screams, and the pop of distant gunfire seemed to overlap and fade into whispers around him. Overwhelmed, Jack dropped to his knees. The weight of Gidget's decades-long vigil crushed him. "I'm here to bring you peace," he managed to say, his voice cracking. The lead ghost stared at him, his gaze penetrating Jack's very soul. "Then tell them," the spirit pleaded. "Tell them we're still here." And with that, one by one, the soldiers began to fade back into the mist. But before they vanished completely, each one raised a hand in a slow, solemn salute. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, they were gone. Jack was never seen again. The next day, local villagers found his camera abandoned near the old base. They developed the film, and the last photograph was chilling. It showed rows of soldiers in perfect formation, standing proudly behind Jack. But in the photo, Jack was looking at the camera, a faint, peaceful smile on his face. He had finally found the story he was looking for, and perhaps he had delivered their message. To this day, People living near Khe Sanh still report hearing the sound of boots marching in the dead of night. Some say it's just the wind whispering through the trees, but others know better. They say it's the soldiers, still on patrol, forever waiting for the orders that will finally bring them home. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the unknown. If you found this story as haunting as I did, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content like this. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious.